Oh, I'm here today with two guys that are just a lot of fun to be around. Both coaches at Iowa Lakes, Cory Munoz, Dalton Whitehall, Jilks,
Yep,
did I
yep.
get that right? Man, I scored. Um, Corey's been around for quite a while. Gotten to know Corey through basically the Twin Rivers tournament, and that's where I really wanted to start our focus on Twin River duels. You both coached it. Man, I had a good time watching both of you coach. What's your thoughts? Who wants to start?
I can start. So
Okay.
first off, Troy, I appreciate all you do for AAU and for that Twin Rivers duel. It takes a village to do something like that. And
Oh God, yeah.
watching it kind of explode from, my first year 3 years ago, even 4 years ago to now this past time, it's just kind of become its own thing. And it's something that we have in our calendar every single year because it's just so much fun. I think what makes it fun is how it's structured. You get a team as far as if you're working with Team Iowa, you get a team, and then on that Friday night, you meet them, right? You meet them at the weigh-in. They come in. We have this Facebook thing that kind of gets the ball rolling. So then they really don't have much rapport with you right away, but you can kind of see as you get all through those duels. I think it was 8 duels we had this year. You can kind of see them come out of the shell, get to trust you a little bit more, get to know you a little bit more, and that's not even specific to the coaching staff. I think it happens with the core unit too, where there's ladies who would never interact with other ladies, that end up meshed up on a team. And then next thing you know, they're giving each other, piggyback rides and doing a bunch of TikTok dances and all that, just makes it a fun opportunity, but also it's a competitive environment too. And it's been a lot of fun doing that. I will have to say though, I did not enjoy my silver bracket runner-up finish, considering I lost to Dalton in the finals. But you can't
Oh
win them all.
man.
You can't win them all.
Oh
I learned
man,
from the
that's
best. That's all I
probably
got. I learned from the best. So,
so is that like for the whole year you have bragging rights then or
no, because we're probably gonna get in the room and wrestle here in a couple days, and he's gonna kick my butt. So we'll call it even.
gotcha. So Dalton, I don't know if I had ever met you prior to this last weekend.
Yeah.
Have you done Twin Rivers before?
I've never. This is my first year.
Okay, so as a newbie, what was your perspective on this tournament?
Man, it was electric. I was telling Coach Muniz over here when we came in, I was a little bit nervous. It was my first time interacting with AAU, and as soon as we got there and the ball, like Cory said, the ball started to get rolling there. Man, I was fired up. Like our teams, like you said, coming in brand new, it was a big challenge, right? Because I'm kind of a by the books kind of guy where I like to sit and study and watch film and really get to know my athletes and this is an opportunity to kind of step outside of that comfort zone on my end, as well as those athletes are putting a lot of trust in coaches like Coach Me and Coach Muniz and the rest of the people that came and volunteered. And so, man, once the duel started going and you could see your team building, it was like putting a whole college season into about a 2 day event. And it was absolutely awesome. I had such a great time.
Yeah, that tournament I didn't coach the first one, but I started coaching, I believe the second one, and I think there was 5 teams there. And then to grow to 100 all girls teams is just amazing anyway. But I've always felt like that tournament, that really takes your coaching to a whole different level. And it can
Oh,
help you
yeah.
bring your coaching to a different level because you got to learn how to communicate really quickly, really
Yeah.
quickly.
Yeah. Right.
What anything that you can take away from that maybe for people that don't understand what we're trying to accomplish there, right? Because it is odd because I get a lot of coaches like, well, we just want to keep our team together. They want to be with people they know and they want to be this. What's some perspective you can give as college coaches on what makes that the idea of just throwing a team together, hopping in and coaching, maybe helpful for the college, for the college growth?
Yeah. Dalton, you want to start? Yeah, I'd love to. Yeah. I had a really cool conversation with one of my athletes at the very beginning of this tournament. We got to our first duel and we were just interacting and she was like, "So, what high school do you coach at?" And I was like, "Well, actually, I'm a college coach," and she goes, "No way. There's girls wrestling in college."
And I said, dude, I'm about to blow your mind, right? Because like the world of women's wrestling is just expanding and growing so fast. And it's a really cool way for me and Coach Muniz and a lot of these other coaches to be a part of. And what I see is that a lot of opportunity for these young girls, right? And I think that especially for a college like us being in the NJCAA, JUCO kind of sometimes gets looked over, especially on that recruiting side. And, me and Coach Muniz really value the idea that, hey, you can come here, develop, get the skills that you need. And a lot of these times, these girls that are in AAU, this is what they're looking for anyway, right? Is an opportunity to build and develop and get the most out of longevity out of their careers. And so for junior college coaches like us, I think it's crucial, right? Because these are the girls that we're going to be seeing coming up in these next few years. And to create that line of contact and that kind of open form of communication where they feel comfortable talking to college coaches means that they're probably going to be more informed going into their college decisions. And then I think we're just going to see better longevity and people enjoying their experiences in the sport, in the collegiate scene a little bit more than probably what we've seen in years past, right?
That's great perspective.
Yeah.
Got anything to add on that, Corey?
Yeah, I think, what's really interesting as we talk about, you know, splitting up teams and getting them with ladies who have they never communicated with before. I think in small town Iowa, I mean, with us being in Esterville, we kind of see it where the cyclical part of the student athlete experience is, hey, now it's fall season, so now I have, cross country. Then it's winter season, I have wrestling. Then it's, spring season, I have track. Now in the summer, I'm playing softball. And it's just really cyclical. And when we kind of take them away from that and go, hey, here are these opportunities outside of the wrestling season, traditional wrestling season, to kind of continue getting you to work. We see, especially on like those progressive high school teams, ladies that are really used to wrestling the same people every weekend are now wrestling the state's best in different states, right? Indiana brings tough teams every year. Montana brings tough teams every year. And then you kind of get this perspective as an athlete of, man, I don't know what's wrong with me today. I'm usually really good. I usually finish those shots. It's like, hey, no, there's just opportunities outside of this where people are all in on these things. We have opportunities outside of a 40 class of 40 graduating class where now you're playing five sports for the you represent them in every season, where here these ladies are doing this full time. And the switch of perspective doesn't have to go, well, now you have to go all in on wrestling. It's just, hey, if it's something that you want to see yourself doing, if you want to bridge that gap to collegiate athletics, you can look and see that outside of the traditional wrestling season, there's opportunities for you to go out there and keep scrapping.
Yeah, very much. So let's hop right into Iowa Lakes.
Yeah.
Iowa Lakes is just it's kind of a small town, obviously small town college environment, JUCO. What is special about Iowa Lakes?
Troy, I'll tell you what, it's real simple. You walk on campus and you'll find out right away we're a family, right? People will say that, and not to say that they're wrong, and not to say that we are the best family out there, but you can kind of feel the momentum right when you walk in of people looking to welcome you into Iowa Lakes for whatever it's worth. I can walk from my office to the wrestling room and shake hands with the president and the janitor, and they both know me by on a first name basis. Because they
Mhm.
they take the time to get to know you, and with that, right, the culture kind of feeds into itself where we are family. We really are. And I think what makes us so different, and bear with me when I say this, right? We have fun. We have fun, right? And when I mean fun, I don't mean we're out there playing tag instead of getting better at the sport of wrestling. We have a perspective on things that make sure that wrestling stays fun. And we can switch that mindset with our athletes that come in and let them know that, like, hey, sometimes getting tired is fun. Sometimes working your tail off and giving it all you got, emptying the tank, that's fun. Competing your tail off, that's fun. Because guess what? Winning's fun too. When we
Yeah.
have fun, it's because we want to win, and when we have that perspective, I think it keeps wrestling from becoming a job for as long as it possibly can. Because anyone who's ever wrestled, especially a collegiate wrestling season, it becomes a job at some point. It's like, man, I have to cut weight. I have to, get to bed early. I have to skip a meal. No, dude, you get to because we love it and it's fun. You get to do this thing, and when we enter with some gratitude and have a different perspective where it's an environment of growth and fun, I think ladies can continue to buy into that, and then more importantly, they can believe that. They do, and then we see a kind of family aspect where these ladies do a lot of stuff together. Like we said, Iowa Lakes in Estherville, Iowa is a small town. You can't do much here outside of go to school and wrestle. And we find ladies who want to do that. And if that's what you want to do and that aligns with what your plans are, it's not a better place. There really isn't. And I think in my experience, I've been here for 5 years. I saw it happen in the sport of wrestling in general. I mean, we had my second year as a graduate assistant, we had Masoma Endine make the national finals. He went to Wartburg, won a couple national titles. He spent last year on Iowa, on the University of Iowa's roster, and now he transferred down to Little Rock. That's a
Yeah.
Laker. I coached him in that national final, and he was the same guy. Came from Dallas. He had all the stuff available to him, but he just wanted to put his head down and work, and he did. He got here, worked his tail off, ended up, continuing that kind of mindset over to Wartburg. I mean, Dalton's a Wartburg grad too. He was able to see him after his time here, so he got that D3 experience with Masoma, and and it just kind of just built a lot of momentum into what we're trying to do here, and it's really starting to pay off now. I mean, it's a long process to get that culture, especially when you start a program from scratch like we did 2 years ago. To where we're at now, and we're just continuing to grow and use that momentum to continue adding ladies who have the same mindset as we have and the same attitude towards wrestling, where it's fun and it's something that we're grateful to do.
And Dalton coming over from a great culture room, right?
Yeah.
And stuff. How do you think that's transferred into Iowa Lakes?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure anybody that talks to my athletes could kind of will tell you that, especially in my first year of coaching here, Wartburg does a really great job of building guys up, right, to believing that they're the best possible athlete that they could possibly be. They're the most trained, the most prepared. And so that's something that I brought over as well. For me, I brought it over a little intense because that was my wrestling. That was my collegiate, right? Was to be a little intense. And I think with women's wrestling, we're seeing a really cool transition where we have that gritty old school Iowa kind of feel style, where now we also have an understanding that we could apply some of these newer scientific discoveries and all this information that we have available to us to give these girls the right experience. And so when I came in, I was pretty drill sergeant. And Cory, shout out to you, man. You did a great job of breaking me of that pretty quick. And I have found that transitioning into a room like that, bringing a really good work ethic and a really good program, right, and mirroring a lot of those things. I still talk with Ethan Hayes. He's the lifting coordinator over there at Wartburg. And so, I still have heavy ties, still communicate with those guys. I try to bring over what I see in other winning cultures, and we try to bring it to this program. And I think that's kind of built out of me and Cory have a general system when we're trying to build our athletes up kind of in a way. And it's like we're trying to build a solid foundation of knowledge first. So when you come into our practice room, right, I would say that it looks pretty similar to a Wartburg-esque room, right? We're heavy on drilling, heavy on play wrestling. We want the girls to just get feels on the mat, right? We want you to be creative and we want you to have a wide variety of offense and defensive options so that you could be the best prepared. And then when we send our athletes out, we don't necessarily try and look for hit a half Nelson, hit a bar arm, right? Because I think that it tends to get easy to call out moves. But something I took from Wartburg is like identifying that immediate problem. And then as a coach, me and Cory are trying to find ways to relay that to you in a way that you understand quickly. And so with that kind of system, I brought that over with me from Wartburg. Cory and me have kind of refined it. And I see I think based on our results this year, I think great results for our girls and something that we're looking to build on further this year. Yeah.
Yeah, we're with coaching JUCO in Iowa, and
Yeah.
is the 23 schools we now have, and recruiting is a difficult thing. So not everybody you're getting has freestyle experience, and
Yeah.
maybe possibly not even not years of wrestling experience. Some of my best athletes I've had in the high school have been come in as juniors, and
Yeah.
they've really shined. What do you think? taking someone that doesn't have much freestyle and getting them ready for freestyle? How is that transition and how is it working with you guys?
Yeah, don't I can
You,
start with this.
yeah.
I tell you, it's pretty simple, and we don't shy away from what it is. It's that transition. It just is that. But really, at the end of the day, wrestling is wrestling. And when we look to the athlete that makes a lot of sense in our program, it's the athlete that wants to score a lot of points. I mean, a takedown's still a takedown, whether it's folk style or freestyle. And all we do is we continue to bridge that gap by transitioning our finishes on our takedowns, our head positioning, our hand fight to make it to where it's better finishes. So there's less, mopping around and exposing your back and all that. But that's really the basis of our transition. You get there, you learn how to transition from a real good hand fight to a real good shot to a real good takedown. Okay, perfect. Now that we got that squared away, here's how we can take somebody down and transition into our lace. Now, as we go and we run down a double, maybe we climb up, go gut on our finish. All that stuff can become like ABC for them rather than going from English to Spanish. It's
Uh-huh.
not nothing new. It's just different steps that when you take what you've already gotten as far as like your technique goes and making those small little tweaks, you'll come to find that you're, gonna make that transition real easy. And the best part about it too, with us being the JUCO realm, they're not alone. They're wrestling people in our conference schedule every single weekend that are doing the same exact thing, that are making the same exact transitions as they are from folk style to freestyle. So we're all learning this together. And when they can recognize that and they can realize that at that beginning part of the year when we do the tough tournaments like the Luther Hill down in Simpson, those are nothing but opportunities for them to collect data. Hey, where are we at in our growth? None of this matters in relation to the national tournament. They don't give out national championships on November 15th. They just don't. That's all the way in March. So we focus on not necessarily relating to the result of the match, but their opportunities to go and show what they've been working on within those competition matches. And from there, they can then build the confidence to know that, hey, we went from here to here, and now we're measuring, now we're here, measuring, now we're here. And that growth continues to build the confidence in them as they transition. Because really, what it does outside of them getting better at the sport of freestyle is it allows them to remove some of the barriers, mental barriers that they may have, where they think, this is too intimidating. This is something totally different than what I've done. What do you mean I can't, throw in a bar and ride for 2 minutes when I get on top? Like that, all that stuff is not a different language. It's just a different font. And I think when they realize it's a different font, it's easier for them to realize that they're not learning a lot. They do have to learn something new. You just have to see it through a different lens. And
Hmm.
that's folk style to freestyle.
I like it. I like that a lot. Who is the girl that makes a good fit for Iowa Lakes?
Yeah, yeah. And I mentioned too at the beginning about the whole like five sport athlete and how you could probably do some more wrestling. One of our most fun athletes, if you will, for lack of a better term, was Riley Weiler from Central Line, Georgia Little Rock. She was a five sport athlete. And what we liked about her a lot was she understood that every chance you get is just that chance. Like if you don't give 100% to practice on Monday, when practice ends on Monday, we don't have practice on Monday anymore. It's already over. And she took that into every training opportunity where she, you know, worked real hard. She got hurt a couple of times because she's kind of a maniac out there when she wrestles. So she puts herself in some crazy positions, but she goes, gets hurt, battles back, attacks recovery just as much she attacked practice when she could. And the same thing with the classroom. If you look behind me, this is our Scholar All-American board, and Riley's on there twice. Riley's a two-time Scholar All-American for us, held a 4.0 GPA her entire time here, just because she checks it out of the boxes that are the reasons why she's so good. It's just someone who wants to work, someone who understands it takes work, but someone who's grateful for the opportunity to go out there and work and to be a everything that they want to be in the best. We talk about, Dalton talks about making the best human being. That's what it is. We don't want wrestlers on our team. We want people on our team who happen to wrestle for us. Because if you can get the person part of it down, then everything else can fire in all cylinders. The last thing we need is for you to be preparing for a big tournament on Saturday, and that paper that you put off is due on Sunday, and now we're worried about this paper we haven't started yet when it's time for us to go out there compete. It's more than just putting your foot on the line and going. It's being the person that we want to fit in our culture, that allows you to be the best wrestler when it's your time to be on the mat too.
Very
Yeah, and
good.
to kind
Very
of
good.
piggyback off Corey, if you don't mind me jumping in here,
Oh yeah.
I really do believe that, I fully stand behind me and Corey Muniz 100%. And I think that we know how to develop a good wrestler. And so a lot of the girls that we recruit, we don't necessarily need you to be that blue chip girl that's gone out and won Fargo and been an All-American multiple times and was a high school state champ. That's not what we're looking for. I truly believe that me and Corey Muniz can make you good at wrestling, right? But we want girls that are full circle. I think another great example would be a girl on our team like Soledad Lukman, coming out of Colorado. She is our culture girl of the year. I swear. She's in all of our community service events. She's in the choir. We don't, when you come to Iowa Lakes, we're not looking to detract from your life. We're trying to help you refine and focus your mind so that you can be the best athlete, you can be the best student, and you can be the best community member as well. Because my job, especially, I believe, working at a college, and for me and Corey, is not to just mold you into a great athlete and then send you on your way. I need to help get you prepared for life, right? I remember when I was in college, teaching my college roommate how to wash dishes, right? And so I think that, we want girls that are willing to learn, girls that are willing to scrap. And I think that, I think back on the quote, Corey will tell you, I throw a lot of quotes at the girls and things. Sun Tzu said, a man without a plan never intended to win at all. Right. And so I always tell our girls that our plan is to just work hard. When I was in college, I was a guy that maybe I wasn't the best athlete. I wasn't the strongest. I wasn't the fastest. I mean, I was maybe 124 pounds wet on a good day. Right. Like, we were struggling to make the weight. But there was one thing that I knew is that I was going to have to outwork everybody I wrestled. And if I could focus on that and producing the most output I possibly could, the input would probably be positive. And so we're looking for girls who are willing to trust the process, right? And girls that are, when they come and meet me and Coach Muniz, right, that they're trusting us to get them technically where they need to be. And in that same boat, we're trusting them to make the right decisions, right, to live the lifestyle and to buy into the program that we're trying to build. And if we can do that, which we've had a really good start, I'd say, Coach Muniz, then if we could keep that going, then I think this is a team that will have a lot of success.
So I had had this conversation with Corey. He you have an athlete coming in, and they're going to be doing hairstyling. I mean, and stuff. So there's a lot of different opportunities at the JUCO level for people with different interests than just your typical 4 year, the 4 year grind stuff. Are you going to be a teacher? Are you going to be a doctor? Are you going to be, in all these different things? But at Iowa Lakes, what are some of the offerings that you're finding people are gravitating towards, or maybe aren't necessarily the mainstream things?
Yeah, yeah, and I think it's funny you bring that up, right? Because granted, I mean, they pay me to put people butts in the seats, but what Iowa Lakes does really well is, like you just said, give those opportunities. I think you can go anywhere and probably get started on some of that nursing stuff. I know that the female wrestler loves to do the nursing, but like you mentioned, we have cosmetology, we have aviation. That's the number one rated community college aviation program in the world. So that's a big thing we got going on. But also, and more importantly for our Iowa athletes, is that there's a big overlay between women's wrestlers and people who like to do ag. I think it's a pretty small circle as far as the Venn diagram goes. And so we have all those ag programs as well. We have farm and diesel technology, where we have one of our athletes from South Dakota coming over and doing that for us. We have ag business, ag production. We have soil sciences and different things of that nature that can kind of help you get some real world experience right away, but also, to get you in the workforce because there is life after wrestling. I know it better than anybody. I mean, I get out of bed sometimes and I have to wake my shoulder up. It has to get a couple hours of sleep more than I do. But it's just, criminal justice, another big program. We just talked about Riley. Riley's actually missing graduation because I think on March or May 4th, she's going down to Central Lyon and starting the police academy. She's getting working through there and she's got a good job set up right away where she's going to get paid twice as much as I get paid to sit right here and talk to you guys. It's a good opportunity for her to do that, but that's not unique to just her, right? There's a lot of ladies in Iowa Lakes that can start here, go to the 4 years if necessary, but also if they want to hang it up and hit the workforce, plenty of opportunities in those trade programs out here too, which one is great because those offerings aren't often at those 4 year institutions, but it's at that community college rate as well. Kind of helps you save on some tuition dollars.
What do you think the average, tuition cost for an athlete at Iowa Lakes is?
Yeah, yeah.
It
So
doesn't
go
even
ahead.
have to be a wrestler. Just I'm guessing across the board, it's probably fairly similar, for what kids are actually paying out of pocket.
Yeah.
Yep, yep. And best part about us being a community college too is we got to wear a lot of hats. You're sitting right now in my office that is in the admissions office. I actually am an admissions counselor here at Iowa Lakes as well. And so we do a lot of these conversations about finances and things of that nature. But the average, I'd say, from a year to year basis, and that is before any financial aid, before any of the scholarships get applied, is about 7,500 bucks. So 75 to 8 grand is where you're at with Iowa Lakes for year to year basis as far as our tuition goes. And then obviously, we like to have our athletes live on campus as well. And that on campus housing and dining adds probably another 75 or 8 grand as well. So you're kind of sitting right at that 16,000 before any financial aid or scholarships are applied.
Gotcha. So 16,000, probably the majority qualify for Pell Grant. Most
Yep.
everybody qualifies for some Pell Grant, so that puts you down around 12. Room and board and the school. Uh, what kind of scholarship offerings can you give as a wrestling coach?
Yeah, yeah. So we're on that need based, right? So and by need, I don't mean the student, I mean the staff. If we need
Uh,
some, weight class, if we need a 103 pounder, we're gonna throw a bunch of money that way. We're gonna have different ways to hedge our bets. But I know that as far as what the athlete can control coming in is our presidential scholarship, which is non-competitive. It's more or less your academic placement that allows you to have some scholarship dollars. And I got to make sure I say this right because I only got one chance to do this. You have to meet two out of the three requirements. So that first one is a high school GPA of 3.4 or higher. That's our
okay,
first requirement. The second is being inside the top 10% of your graduating class. And then that third one is an ACT score of 23 or an SAT score of 1130. So that's kind of your parameters. You need to meet two out of those three, and then you get a $3,000 scholarship regardless. Here for Iowa Lakes too, which is nice, because then we talk about, like you just said, that 12,000 that we still gotta cut down. Now we're sitting at 9. Now we're south of 10 grand, and I haven't even touched any of my institutional dollars I can give for being a wrestling coach. And that in turn, right, allows the student athlete to be more marketable too. As much as I would love to throw a bag at a lady who's worth every penny of it, I might be much more inclined to get a lady on a discount, if you will, if she's got those great academics coming in too. Because it's a
yep.
double-edged sword, right? It's, hey, I can help myself add another lady in the room by, cutting some of that scholarship dollar too. But also on the other end, you've proven to be someone who can take care of class. So now you're not a worry for me as far as eligibility goes, as far as, showing up to class, getting your stuff in on time. And I'll tell you, Troy, I would rather have 99 of those than
Yep.
one person who puts people on their head but never goes to class.
Hmm. Because that person's not gonna be around for your the 2 years you get with them.
Exactly.
Uh,
Right.
Dalton, how has the transition been from like a 4 year,
Yeah.
you're at that 4 year to the 2 year, and what do you believe the benefits of like the JUCO route might be for somebody?
Yeah, absolutely. I love talking about this. I'm originally from Washington State. I'm from the Seattle area, and when I go back, I talk to people about the benefits of sending their kids JUCO, especially out here in the Midwest, I believe. I'm a little biased, right, being at Iowa Lakes, but I just see so much more opportunity. I think that as our landscape of wrestling grows, right, it becomes a kind of a supply and demand issue where we're gonna have a lot of women's wrestlers who necessarily have the skill to go on and wrestle to college, but might not necessarily have the means to get there at a larger university. And I also think that there's a lot of pressure on this generation of young women to know what they're going to do pretty quickly, right? So right out of high school, especially I felt it in my grade, right? I remember sitting at graduation and I was hearing all these listing off of she's going here and he's going here, and I was like, man, I don't know what I'm gonna do. I just know that I'm gonna go wrestle. I think that junior college that 2 year route takes a lot of pressure off of that. I tell a lot of our kids that aren't sure what they want to go into or kind of on the edge about what they're wanting to do later in life is, hey, you know right now that you want to wrestle. That might help. That might be the means to your end of getting some sort of degree, right? If you're not sure, right? Like if you were unsure about a car, you wouldn't go down and spend $40,000 on a car that you're unsure about. When you could go, hey, I'll drive around in a 2001 Saturn for 2 years and make sure, right? Not saying that we're necessarily that discounted, but right, like that there's a little more security in knowing that, hey, me and Coach Muniz aren't worried as much as I would love for you to be a champion here. Our focus is your development, right? We want to be able to send you to those 4 year universities well prepared as a person. And so I'd say for people that haven't spent a whole lot of time away from home, right? Or just getting into, I was a kid that left high school and I was like, man, I hate going to class. Like, I just didn't know what I loved yet.
Yep.
I think that a junior college would be a fantastic option for a kid like that. Or if you do know what you know, if what you want, like Riley knew she wanted to go police academy. She jumped right into it and she knew that we had the resources and the availability to get her into positions of opportunity that normally she wouldn't have at a 4 year university, kind of bogged down with those larger class sizes, larger numbers of student population. So yeah, I think that especially if you're a kid that knows you need development, whether that's in the classroom, on the mat, maybe even just as a person, and that's a hard conversation to have sometimes. But if you're mature enough to have that, I think that a place like a junior college where I don't know if there's a day that goes by where I don't see one of my athletes. You know what I mean? Where I don't have a conversation with them, where I'm not talking to a professor about like, hey, I mean, I'll be in the break room and the professor will be like, man, you'll never believe Cory aced his math test, this and that, and we'll have our own celebration for Cory, like on our own. And I think that a junior college is a place where I know every kid on this campus. You know what I mean? And if you want to be seen and heard, junior college is a great place to start and learn how to be a young adult, not just a good wrestler.
So I had this conversation with Cory prior to starting this,
Yeah,
and your guys rate you don't lose people. I mean, they're
yeah.
over the program has not lost a lot of people over multiple years of being around. Why do you think if you go anywhere else? I mean, I remember I went to a small school too, Dana College, and when
Yeah.
I also helped coach there the last few years, and they wanted us to bring in 20 people every year because by Christmas time, five of them were not going to be there any longer. By the next year, for sure, half of that class was down. So now we have probably 8 to 10 of those people are left, and then a few more would leave to keep the team that we were looking at, well, to make their numbers that they wanted, to all those things. Why do you think your rate of you don't lose people? Why is that?
Yeah, I think one thing that, again, we talk about Iowa Lakes and the family of it all. I think people come because of Coach and I selling the program, but they don't stay for us. They stay for the trio, the student services that are available. They stay for the friends that they make outside of the wrestling as well as inside the wrestling world. There's a lot of things that make it hard for you to do nothing but plant your roots, and I think that it's a lot to do with all the people that are involved here in Iowa Lakes. We come to find out right away that within the first week or so, maybe first couple of weeks of our training cycle, we have our trio student services people come out and meet our team. They come, they say, hey, my name is Jody. I'm here if you need me, right? Because I think as you navigate through this realm of young adults, there's a lot of pressures outside of everything that make support really hard sometimes. And when they know that, if we're busy or if we got stuff going on, they can rely on others to help out, then that's huge too. And sometimes just knowing there's people that are available is enough for them. And that's why we go and we let Trio Student Services come and talk to our athletes, because whether they need them or not, they know they're there. And they do a really great job of being present in all of our events and stuff too. There's people, or I'll shout out our financial aid. Deb's our financial aid lady. She comes to all of our dual meets. You'll hear her. She's front and center screaming, "Let's go Lakers!" She's big on it. And that way, as they become young adults and they get the bill for the first time, they have to deal with financial aid for the first time. They have all of these barriers to entry. Deb will remove them. She'll, hey, sit down. This is what we got to do. This is what financial aid looks like. Perfect. Now, my first adversity I ever had as a young adult has already been solved. And that's one thing that I don't have to worry about. Then it goes down to, Margaret in the cafeteria services. She'll come, ask people, what they think of the food, if they want to change stuff, what they might want to have. Now, our student athletes are feeling involved in the community too. Hey, I wanted to have some thing added to the salad bar, and then now next week it's there. And I talked to Margaret and she got that for me. That stuff allows our students to build a lot of confidence in knowing that people care about them and they want to see them continue to be here at Iowa Lakes. And it helps, but it doesn't hurt either that I think we see on the athletic side of the sport. These ladies are starting from, not world beaters to being pretty darn good at the sport when it's all said and done. I think Alexa Karch is a good example of that. She was 2-2 at the state tournament in Nebraska last year. Didn't place, comes in out of nowhere, and she finishes fourth in the nation at 180 pounds. Abby G, our 131 pounder, can never make it on the podium at state. She just couldn't figure it out. And now you're telling me that she needs to jump a level and get somewhere she's never gotten. Then she decides to give it all she got, finishes seventh in the nation for us. It's just really cool to see the growth happen, and it builds a lot of confidence in them as student athletes to continue their growth because they can see it. That there's that data collection that allows them to have those measurements of growth as well.
So, what's the vision for the program?
Real simple. We're gonna go out there and compete, and we're gonna be the best of them. I think we finished a team best 8th in the nation this year, just behind Iowa Western. And the hope is that we're right there with everybody. Top 5 finish every year. And I think when it comes to competitive side of things, I mean it when I say the results don't matter. I don't really want the result to be how you're known as a wrestler, as a competitor. But what I would love is for, let's say Dalton's my 138 pounder. All I want is for every 138 pounder in the state to cut a bunch of weight on Monday, come down, skip meals, do all the things they got to do, get tired at practice, make weight on Saturday morning, and get pissed off because he's got to wrestle an Iowa Lakes lady in Dalton in the first match. I want us to be feared on brackets. man, what do you mean we got Iowa Lakes? They might beat us, but they don't want to wrestle us again because we're going to be out there competing whistle to whistle. And when you start to find out that if that's what you do and if that's how you want to attack competition, well, then the results that you're looking for are going to start to come. You don't go chasing the results, you go chasing the work, and the results are just a byproduct of that work that you put in. And I think from a lineup standpoint, 103 to 235, that's our goal. That's our goal. It's just to have scrappers. I mean, I want these matches to be just dogfights, out there just scrapping, going, whistle to whistle, and then regardless of whether you win or lose, like knowing you gave it all you had is about all we could ever ask for. I hate the whole like wrestling not to lose kind of vibe. Sure, I would love to, keep matches close because I think I can beat a lady, right? But if I lose to her 1-0 because I didn't take any attacks, I don't know how to get better on Monday after my 1-0 loss. Now, if I took 5 bad sweep singles and got scored on and got tech 10-0, hey, you still lost. But now on Monday, we know we got a lot to work on because we have that data that we collected. We know how to get better because of it. And if you can flip that switch and decide every match is just an opportunity, well, then the results you want are going to come before you know it.
And kind of piggybacking on that, you know, I you're asking what the goal for our team is, and I'll give you kind of a roundabout answer to this. I was at U23 trials the year that Masoma and Dean made the team, and we had gone down together, and I swear we had done everything exactly the same. Everything exactly, trained the same, ate the same, did everything the same. He made the team, I didn't, right? And I remember I was sitting there on the phone with my mom, and I was like, Mom, I'm done. Wrestling's given up on me. And I was like, I've given it everything I had, and it's just not working out. Masoma made me hang up the phone, and he said, wrestling is a sport where you can do everything right and still not get the result that you want. And it's one of the only sports where that's true, where you can do everything the right way, everything that you were supposed to, and it still might not get you the result you want. But he said, but you still showed up because you loved this. So me and Cory's goal is to make this something that these girls could love regardless of result, right? And if they can do that, that could become applicable in other areas of their life as well, which I think is intrinsic of success. And so I think it just doubles down on what me and Cory said at the beginning. Our goal is not to make great wrestlers. You know what I mean? You could lose a million matches for me, or you could be a national champion. At the end of the day, we're worried about making good people. And I think in result, the good wrestling will come with that as well.
Very good. I like that. There's a lot of what I talk about in there too. So I always
Yeah.
like to hear those things. Both of you have unique styles. I am also a guy that typically a lot of people look to see what shoes I'm wearing. I
Yeah.
was boring at Twin Rivers this year because my knees are getting bad, but I like to have a specific style. But both of you guys have. If I see a cowboy hat, I know it's Cory. Dalton, I know you got, well, your hair is great. I mean,
Yeah.
the only other, I'm a little far away from that, but
Yeah.
why do you think it's important to have this uniqueness? Because that, I think wrestling, I think we thrive on that, but what's unique about you and what makes you maybe want to stand out in a crowd?
Yeah, yeah. I think the big thing is I'm a coach the same way I was a competitor. If I'm too wound up, if I'm too serious, I don't think I can put my best effort out there. And I think for me, I want to keep things loose. And me wearing a cowboy hat and, stomping around and being crazy in the corner, that's to show them that, again, right? The result doesn't matter. Let's have fun. Now, that can sometimes get misconstrued. If you didn't know me very well and you saw me in a tournament with my cowboy hat acting a fool and leaving, you probably think I'm running a circus back here. But we there's a lot of trust in me and Dalton projecting exactly who we are every single day to these ladies. So that way it can kind of bring down their walls and they can be themselves with us too. I'm the same person every day. I'm gonna always attack things with some sort of humor. I really don't think I'm ever serious a day in my life. But in a good way, right? Because I think that can allow the uniqueness of our athletes to show too. And what we do and what we try to do is get to know our athletes as people. Because now if if every conversation I have with my athlete is about wrestling, well then it's one dimensional, and I'll be honest too, the best parts of my day is when I don't talk about wrestling. I love the fact that I can just step away from it sometimes too, because it's important to have that balance. And if I'm not talking wrestling, I'm usually talking about the score of the Cubs game, which they just lost last night. They got beat up a bit, but you have those different uh parts of your personality that if you're not afraid to let those out, they won't be either. And I think it helps them, like we mentioned too, with all the stuff about them not wanting to leave or retention. They can feel like they're exactly who they are too every single day. And when we can be unique and show that, we're not the traditional wrestling coach, well, then it can be easier for them to not expect that kind of traditional, run till you're tired and if you don't win for me, then you suck. We're not that. And it shows it in how we kind of go about every day, but also, how we try to set ourselves apart from the rest of the wrestling community. Because I know, like you said, a bunch of oddballs in this game, but how can we be the oddest of them all?
Yeah, it's funny because when I was coming on to work for Cory, I kind of became familiar, and I had saw all the antics, for lack of a better word, right? Like and at first, I think it does tend to scare people. We're like, man, this guy doesn't take it serious. Getting to know Cory, right? It all of it is double down on the other side. Like when we're going to work, that's what we're doing. And that's something that I could say was the biggest thing that I've learned underneath Cory this year is when I came in, I was pretty cut straight dry. We come in, you leave all your baggage at the door, and we go to work, right? And I think that I had started to become a little more uniform in that sense, and that's never who I've necessarily been, and it really helped me remember, and then later translate that onto my athletes. That I think what we're trying to do is let these girls recognize that what we do is an art as well, right? And to a certain degree, right, artists have to be themselves in order for themselves to produce art, right? It's a direct reflection of yourself. And so for me to not create a space where these girls are comfortable enough to be themselves and go and produce the art that they want to produce, I feel like is restricting their creative muscles, right? And with wrestling, you want those kids to go be game changers, not game players, right? And so I think that by having this kind of laid back, hey, I don't take myself too serious, and you see me go to work every day and apply all of my skills, hunt greatness, do all these things, strive for that expectation that we have. But I can also sit back and laugh, and we could joke, and we could talk about how my hair looks goofy, right? And I think that having that balance really takes a lot of the stress off these girls, which is already piled on them, and you just don't get good results under heavy stress environments.
And I don't think we can say it looks goofy. It's something I would love to have right at this point in time of my life. I would be,
uh,
of course, I spend a
yeah.
lot less on
Well,
hair
when it goes,
product.
I'll
It,
donate. The girls have been trying to get me to keep it. I've been trying to cut it, but well, we'll say if I donate, it's all yours.
that'd be great. Oh my God. So, man, I had something in my head there for a second. I lost it. Man. Um, oh, we all came from wrestling boys, right?
Yeah.
We grew up in this system. Boom, boom. It's this is how it's got to be. We don't do this. We do this. We're very like you said, very stringent, very rigid almost. And I don't want your emotion on this, Matt. Um, 12 years ago, I believe it is 12 years, I started coaching girls, and I threw all that out the window. What is special about coaching female athletes?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I think I have coached my last male wrestling team 3 years ago. I don't think I'm ever going to go back into that realm. And it's because the female athlete, now, granted, for the sake of my job, they're coachable, and I love being a coach to athletes who are coachable. That's one of them. But two, they love to be challenged. They love to figure out where's the next opportunity for them to be challenged in their life, to overcome adversity, but also, there's some tough ladies who have had the wrestling opportunity door closed on them because it just wasn't available yet. And to see these athletes want to continue wrestling, and I think they're starting to figure out what we know in the sense that like wrestling is just a crazy sport and you got to be crazy to do it. Because unfortunately for Iowa, we see a problem where girls basketball teams, they're having trouble filling rosters. Everyone's
Yeah.
leaving to go wrestle. They want to go wrestle. And I think it's because they can see the stuff that transitions a lot into what makes women's wrestling at Iowa Lakes so unique in the sense where they do that because they can allow themselves to be themselves too on the mat. I know, and sometimes it's kind of funny and funky where we're at the state tournament down at the Extreme Arena, and then in between sessions, we're doing the Macarena. All the refs are wearing pink, but like that's because we're leaning into this thing, and we're giving these female athletes the opportunity to have this identity that they can have a lot of pride in, and I think that only gets multiplied at the collegiate level. That they really fall into this identity of they're not wrestlers, they're women's wrestlers, and they're their own thing and they're having their own challenges and giving us the opportunity to let them have that opportunity themselves is enough for me. And that's why I want to continue this development on the female side of the sport because I do think as underrepresented as wrestling is, I think women's wrestling, believe it or not, is saving the sport of wrestling in general. I think we're starting to see instead of programs cut their men's teams, they're adding women's teams. And we're saving the sport because of what the female athlete at the middle school, high school level is doing. That they're allowing us to see that not only the, growth in the sport, but on the back end of things, right, as far as college institutions go, they're seeing the enrollment that they can continue to grow from by adding women's wrestling and adding women student athletes on campus. And if that in turn keeps the opportunities for the sport to grow, we're going to see how exciting, how surprising, this sport's going to be as it continues to explode in popularity. And I just love being able to have just a little bit of say in that too, and that's why I'm in this thing, and that's why I think I'm going to stay in this thing.
I like that.
Yeah,
I agree with you. I'll never go back to coaching boys ever again. Dalton, is this your first experience in the whole female
Yeah,
wrestling realm?
so coming from Washington's been kind of a interesting experience because when I started as a sophomore in high school, and it, we've always had a women's wrestling team. I had a full roster of women when on my high school team, and so they had same practices as us and everything. So I've always been around it. So when I came to Iowa in college, and they were like, "Yeah, well, girls don't necessarily wrestle yet," and I came back in 2020, that I was like, "Oh, well, that's weird." I had a full roster, and so I think that especially seeing this sport develop in the way that it has, right? I don't know if there is necessarily, and take what I say with a grain of salt here. It is my first year, but I don't think that there needs to be that lack of rigidity necessarily. Just more of a directed approach to it. I think that these girls, they need to hear the same intensity, right? When I need you to go to work, I need you to go be a dog for me, right? And I need you to go figure these situations out. But I think that the approach becomes different. That's why when I try and coach, especially in that competition setting, I'm looking to be very positive. Hey, believe in your training. Trust the process. We did all these hard things. You'll often hear me say it in practice a lot is like, hey guys, this is gonna be tough. Just let it be tough, right? And figure it out. It's gonna be hard. Let it be hard and figure it out. And as you build that up, I think that you start to see confidence build, especially in these young women, where I think that maybe from a societal point, they lack that kind of support, that push of, hey, you can do anything, you can go do hard things, you're built for great things, go do that, right? I think that becomes an environment where they start to get built up through that programming. And so I agree. I'm fully on this women's wrestling wave. I think that it's taking the world by storm right now. You're seeing a lot of high level techniques, a lot of high level athletes that are finally getting their opportunity to shine on a big stage. And I think that we're seeing a lot of that start at this collegiate point and really pushing a lot of women's careers forward in a really awesome way, where I think that it'll quickly catch up and maybe I'm crazy for saying this, but potentially surpass the men's side of the sport here in the next couple of years.
All right. I got just a few things left I'm going to ask you guys, and these are more maybe your own personal things, not so much Iowa Lakes. What has wrestling taught you? We can
Yeah,
start with
yeah.
Dalton. He was on my big screen, so we'll start with Dalton
Let's do it,
first.
Dalton. Let's hear it. Take
Yeah,
it away.
absolutely. Um, I talked a little bit about that moment with me and Masoma, but I have to say, wrestling really taught me how to care about something fully and invest into it. And I realized, I think, the depth of love for something that you could have through wrestling, right? And that normally that is love is often faced with some type of toughness or hardship, right? And how the duality to that is really, really important, right? And that you can really appreciate those high moments, right? Going out and winning a national title is really cool, but I also had to be the kid that was getting pinned, right, in a spladle when I was in my sophomore year of high school. So I think letting the process kind of flow by itself and trusting in yourself is what I learned through wrestling. Yeah.
All right, Corey.
Yeah. So I'll tell you, I was pretty fortunate with wrestling to kind of be surrounded by people who pushed me from the start. I didn't start wrestling until I was a high schooler. But then right in my realm, I had a bunch of people who ended up going D1 and wrestling at a high level that kind of beat me up from the start. And so what wrestling really taught me was kind of like what Dalton was saying, dealing with adversity, but it also helped me get a lot of things in my life because of the framework that wrestling had. I mentioned, my high school career. I was, my senior year, actually my first 2 years of wrestling, I was just learning, and again, I was in Chicago area, so there was 400 kids in each class. So I didn't get many opportunities in the starting lineup. And then my junior year, actually, I was behind the state champ. He was a couple time All-American for Arizona State, Mikel McGee. He was my practice partner, and he was our starter. So I actually had to transfer out into a school down by the O'Hare Airport just to make the starting lineup. And then I get there. I had a pretty okay year, and then at the sectional tournament, the one before state, I in the match to go down, I busted up my knee, and I couldn't wrestle, and I couldn't finish the match, and I didn't have a state tournament under my belt at all coming out of high school, and it was kind of like an ego death there, right? It was, hey, is this for me? All I've done is put my heart and soul in this thing, and I have nothing to show for it. And then I went to Illinois State. I didn't even go to wrestle in college right out of high school because I was done with the sport. Then I come to find out that I'm not going to class. I'm not doing my homework. And then we finish our first year of college, and I have a 1.1 GPA. And now I'm like, well, what am I missing? I'm missing everything that came with wrestling: the family, the adversity, the ability to hold myself accountable. So then I called up a school down in Arkansas. I said, hey, I know you guys just started your program last year. Can I join? And somehow Coach Leroy Gardner, he said yes, believe it or not. He told me I can come. And I came down. And then I had that perspective of what life was like without wrestling after having it in my life. So then my perspective was pretty simple. I'm going to go out there and give it everything I got. And whatever happens is not a product of me. It's just a product of all the work I've put in and the person I've become because of it. And what that product is, whether it's measurable on the wrestling mat or not, it's the bachelor's degree I got with 4 minors. It's the master's in business administration that I got, all from wrestling and the opportunities that it gave me to set myself up for success in life under everything that is, the surface of wrestling. And so as I kind of like recognized it and I transitioned from a wrestler to a coach, all I want to do is be able to let whatever that experience I had, let that be an avenue for them to take that same route. Where like, hey, if you need school, if you need to get away from home, if you need anything, right, let wrestling be that avenue to allow you to get where you want to be in life. because you come to find out if you win a national title, you don't gain an inch. You're not taller the next day. You're not more popular the next day. You don't have $1 million the next day. You're still the same person. Regardless of the result, you're still the same person. But everything that you had to do to set yourself up for the opportunity to go out there and try to win a national title, well, all that stays. Whether you win or lose, all that work stays. And that becomes who you are beyond wrestling. And I found it out pretty early in my career as a wrestler, and I think that's why I'm in it, and that's what the love of wrestling. I love wrestling, but I don't like wrestling. I don't like wrestling a bunch. I don't like getting tired as much anymore. I'm old. I'm decrepit, all that stuff. But I love what wrestling can do for everybody and what it's going to continue to do for everybody. And that's something that I found out real early, and that's kind of how I carry myself into the later part of my life now as I hang up my competitive shoes.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a question. Actually, I'm going to get that question answered tonight because I'm going to talk to one of your girls that's transitioning from wrestler to manager, videographer, and seeing how her career goes. So, going to kind of make it an Iowa Lakes week next week. But um, that how do you help people do that transition? I remember my identity was wrapped around wrestling because it was the only thing that I really did. I wouldn't even say well because I was never a place winner. A qualifier at the NAIA level, but it was everything that was everybody knew me as a wrestler. That's all I knew myself as. So when that last match stopped, man, I was a wreck for a long period of time. I didn't know what I was, didn't know what I was doing. Um, Finally, I found my way back to coaching. But how are you helping your kids develop that?
Yeah, and I think Michaela's going to be a great example of that. You got to find out who you are, and I joke about this, and this isn't really a good segue for life after wrestling because it doesn't really mean much in the grand scheme of things. But I tell people I'm not a wrestler. I'm a Cubs fan. Like that's my identity. I'm not a wrestler. I'm a Cubs fan. I love baseball. I love running. I love, outdoor stuff. That's who I am. And the quicker we can get people to recognize that they're not wrestlers. You're not a wrestler. You just happen to wrestle. And if you can do that, then they can never truly get attached to that identity of wrestling, and it makes it easier for them to transition. I think again, hate to bring her up twice here in this podcast, but Riley is great at that. That lady, when wrestling season's done, she takes time away. She hangs out with her family. She hangs out with her friends. She goes home and sorts pigs for her dad. And when it's time to wrestle, she's all in. And so I have nothing but confidence to know that she's going to be perfect and fine without wrestling because wrestling's not who she is. And we don't want that to be who anybody is because, especially, with wrestling as it stands, there's not a professional league. They're just not. You don't go and get drafted and now you're playing for the Chicago Cubs, playing second base like I was supposed to do 14 years ago. You just grow up and you're your own person. And we can navigate through the transition from wrestler to person, it kind of has to happen before it happens, because you never really know when your last match is going to be until you have it. Then, like, that's it. Now I'm done. And if you get to that point and haven't started thinking about what life is after, it's going to hit you really hard. It just will. And that ego death, all those things. So when we talk about what Iowa Lakes has to offer, we're already getting them set up with internships. We're doing different things where, they're going and seeing you and I in case they want to continue on and be a regular student. They're going like Riley with the workforce. Willow Stewart, another one of our athletes, is doing actually she just I think accepted a position down in Utah to join their force for police. It's all those things that it's kind of falls on us as coaches to make them aware of what's out there outside of wrestling. And it's also on us to make sure that they don't fall into that personality as well, because again, when we get in that recruiting process, we don't recruit wrestlers. We don't. We recruit people who happen to wrestle for us. They can step in, step out. They can be exactly who they need to be when we need them to be that, but they can also still step away and recognize that, hey, I'm a person too. and I can go and have friends. I can go experience things. I can go, do my hobbies. I mean, Michaela is out taking photos and doing uh videography for some of the men's opportunities as they're doing like their open mats and stuff. And I love that for her. And I think she is a perfect example of a lady who, and I don't want to take too much from her because I can imagine you're going to interview her tonight, but she didn't know what she wanted to be when she got here. And then she kind of fell into, through opportunities, a passion she didn't know she had. And now I'm super confident as she's transitioning out of being a wrestler to the her passions that I know that she can make that transition free of the ego death of it all because she's no longer a wrestler in her mind. She's already on to that next phase of her life.
Very good. How about you, Dalton?
Yeah, I'm somebody I don't know if the ego death has hit me yet. I graduated from college last year. And I still train every day, and I love it, and I think that it helps, especially coming in out of my collegiate career, is that I was full tilt. I'm a guy that if you allow me to get 4 practices in a day, I'll live there. You just give me a sleeping bag, I'll set up a tent. But Cory has done a really good job of helping me balance out and build out a good structure to find a good balance between the two. And I think that it's pretty helpful for our athletes, and especially me being in a graduate assistant position a little bit closer in age to them, seeing directly what that looks like. I never really intended to coach in college. That wasn't my plan. That wasn't my path. I never got a degree in it or anything. It was something that I transitioned into, and that was my kind of hard ego death where it goes, hey, I'm not a competitor. I can't just get on the mat and scrap super hard and kind of transition all those emotions and feelings and all the training in through my own performance. So it was more of a discussion of how do I still fulfill and fill up my bucket, right, as a competitor, and still give these girls the best opportunity to be successful. And Cory's done a really good job of helping me navigate that, which I think is a very close, direct example for these girls to understand that, hey, after college, it may not be competing, right? Maybe it's not even coaching, but you can still be involved in the sport in some way, even if it's just as a fan, right? That is good enough for you and for all the experience that you poured into this. And so, yeah.
Very good. Last one before I'm going to give you both an opportunity for final thoughts. But last question prior to that, not the organization, but what do you think it means to wrestle like a girl?
Yeah, yeah. You want to start, Dalton?
Yeah, I'd love to. What do I think that it means to wrestle as a girl? I think that means confidence, and that to wrestle like a girl means to be creative and accepting of yourself and what you've produced. I think that I'm a guy that I'm getting tattooed on my back that strong men make strong women, in honor of my mother and the women in my family. And I see that, I think societally these girls sometimes get pushed to the background, and they're made for great things. And so to wrestle like a girl, I think, is to do great things because they're capable of it.
Like it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's pretty much all Dalton said, right? But to me, it seems like to wrestle like a girl is to just wrestle, and it's funny because we talk about women's wrestling and men's wrestling and all these things, and the only reason why I have women's wrestling on this thing is because we have to have our own merch. I think wrestling is wrestling, and to wrestle like a girl is to just be able to have an opportunity to do what we already do, and women's sports is not it's not women's sports, it's sport. Women are just doing it, and women can do it and they will continue to do it. And so wrestle like a girl is to just wrestle. I mean, it's just wrestling. And I love all the quirkiness that comes with, like we talk about the pink ref shirts and all the fun things that we do. But sometimes I want to get to a point where I hope, you know, girls wrestling doesn't need to have its own identity because girls wrestling is still just wrestling. It's just wrestling. And I don't want there to be a discrepancy between the two. and women should have all the opportunity that men have, especially in sport. And they already do. They do with girls wrestling and kind of with that explosion and with the things that AAU does with Twin Rivers and all that. All we're doing is evening the playing field so then it just becomes wrestling. Wrestle like a girl is just to wrestle. And that's just women doing it and girls doing it. And when we get to that point, you'll start to see, that honestly, wrestling like a girl is more or less winning more because girls are gonna start winning. They're a lot better at the technical side of it. I mean, the way they go out there and scrap. And I'll tell you what, I don't I see men get put to the back and pinned a lot more than these females who can bridge from anywhere and
Yeah.
somehow get back to their stomach, right? So they're wrestle like a girl is just to one up, the opportunity to make sure that hey, it's an even playing field. We can do it too. We always have. We just now have an opportunity to go out there and show everybody that we can do everything you're doing. Because there's not boys wrestling and girls wrestling. We're just wrestling. Everyone's wrestling.
Yeah. What you just said there, there was a point where every time we had a tournament, we had to get every girl together and take a picture. And it just was like this little chronicle of showing the growth. And I got to a point where I was like, when are we going to get to a point when we don't have to take a picture of this event? And we're finally there. I mean, like the girls' state tournament, we just don't do it anymore. But I remember the first one down in the Stream Arena before it's sanctioned, we pulled everybody to the center. All the girls had to come from the back room to take a picture. Someone went up above, and now we're to that point where it's just the girls' state tournament. We don't have to chronicle this great growth and get everybody's picture because it happens every year now. It's part of it. Um, Last thing I always do is I give the people I've interviewed the opportunity to give some final thoughts, typically on wrestling, but something else is on your mind. The floor is yours.
Dawn, you want to start?
Yeah, yeah. I think that I guess just to close out, I told you that I'm a quote guy, and something that I've been preaching a lot to my athletes lately is mindset wise. And so if you're a girl out there and you're struggling with the idea of like maybe you're not winning a lot of matches or maybe you're struggling with wrestling, I wouldn't tell you to give up. I don't think that wrestling is made through yelling affirmations into a mirror, right? I think that it's built through creating an insurmountable amount of evidence that you are who you say you are, right? So for those girls that are really affected by outward kind of variables, or maybe they're not believing in themselves, I would tell them to trust that process, right, and to invest in themselves, because I think that what we've seen is that when these young women invest in themselves, great things tend to happen. And so if you're a girl that's kind of on the fence about taking a chance and diving fully into this and fully committing, I would say go ahead and do so. It's a very fruitful endeavor.
Yeah. Hey, I got my Nike on. There's my Nike plug too, right? Hey, just do it. Just do it. I mean, if you're thinking about wrestling, just do it. I've seen so many people, both, young adults to old to boys to girls to women to men, and if they've tried wrestling, 99%, and I think in my mind, 99% sounds about right. 99% of them never regret it. There, it's not for everybody, but I've never seen someone come up to me and go like, "Man, I just wish I never did wrestling to begin with. I wish I never started this thing." Everybody has their own opinion of what wrestling can do for them, but you never know if you don't find out. You just never know. And so if you're on the fence, right, if it's something that, we want to try to do or we didn't think about doing, or maybe we tried once 5 years ago and didn't like it, give it a try. Give it a try. And I think wrestling as it stands is truly, I mean, I can thank everything that I have in my life to wrestling, and I'm forever grateful. I don't think I say it enough about my own gratitude, but I'm grateful for the sport. I'm grateful for girls wrestling, women's wrestling. I'm grateful for the people who trust in Iowa Lakes and trust in us. Those who don't trust us and go to other programs and have great times there too. I'm grateful for them because they found whatever their niche is and they found their growth in that sport. And I'm not here, in Northwest Iowa, 7.5 hours from home if it wasn't for this thing. I don't know where I'd be. But everything that's gotten me to have opportunities like this to go to meet you, to meet Dalton, to meet the ladies behind me and the ones in the past and the ones in the future. Uh, it's a blessing. It really is, and it's something that I don't take for granted. And I know that one of these days it's just gonna be done for me. I'm gonna be done coaching, and I'm gonna be the old guy on the rocking chair, trying to learn how to play the banjo if that may be where I'm at, right? But I'm gonna forever be fond of these memories, And I think when I think about wrestling, my favorite memories of wrestling are never about the competitions. It's never. It's the long bus rides. It's the sitting on the bench and talking to my teammates in between duels. It's the tournaments where I'm out there screaming, hooting, and hollering for my teammates or my athletes as they navigate through, a barn burner or whatever. All of my wrestling memories are built off of experiences and not actual competition or results or anything like that. And that's something that I don't think athletes, males or females, can recognize. I think they take that for granted. I think when you leave the sport and you transition out of it, as much as I can run through, my regional state or my sectional final where, man, I wish my knee didn't blow up on me, right? That comes every now and again, but that will always come as, I continue to be a competitive mindset kind of guy. But everything that also, keeps coming back to me is all the friends I made, all my late night conversations in the hotel rooms, all the talks with my coaches, all the life lessons, all that comes through too. And it comes through in bunches. And I thank wrestling for its innate ability to be so personal because it's just you and somebody else. And I think that's what makes it different from a lot of different team sports. As individual as it is, the shortstop of a baseball team has a different practice than the pitcher does. But the 103 and the heavyweight go through the same practice. So regardless of, if I ever interact with either one of them, I know that we're having a shared experience and we can at least relate on that. And that brings athletes of teams, wrestling teams, so close in that nature because they know, hey, if I'm dog tired, I can look to my right and here's a lady that's just as tired and she's stepping in front of the line and going to war again. I'm gonna do it for her then too. What do you mean? Like I'm tired, but hey, she is too, and I know it's gonna get us better. And those experiences, I think, stick with the athlete a lot more than, hey, I won the BVU Open, at 180 pounds one time. Whatever. They don't have a history book of BVU 180 champs. They just don't. But they have a history book of all the experiences and the scrapbooking, if you will, mentally throughout your experience as a collegiate wrestler and as a wrestler in general, right? I think, again, sorry for this long-winded answer, by the way,
Oh, no,
but I
you're
think
fine.
about like AAU, right? Twin Rivers. I love that. I love when these ladies can go and make experiences that they have in a short 2 day bit blimp, and then that's they can have that forever. I was at weigh-ins and there was a lady and her dad from my team from 3 years ago who was like, "Hey, Cory, how's it going? I saw the team did really well this year. We've been following along. It looks awesome. What team are you coaching? Oh, we're on this team." I spent 2 days with them 3 years ago, and they
Yep.
still remember me, and they still have those experiences, and I still remember them. And that is wrestling. That's wrestling to me. And that's why I love it. And that's the whole, long-winded answer for why you should just do it.
I like it. Well, gentlemen, it's been really fun to get to know you better. I really enjoyed again, like I had that opportunity to kind of watch coaching a little bit more the last couple of years I've had that opportunity, but I really spent time watching it this time and I even popped in on when you had the girls asking what they're grateful for, and I popped in and gave them my 2 cents. So I'm grateful for coaches like you because I know that my years of coaching are just about done, but my years in wrestling are not. So I'm excited to have people with your energy, your, the quirkiness. I love that because that sets you guys apart. And I think that anybody that wants to continue wrestling and Iowa Lakes might have a program for them, I think they're in very good hands. And it's been really fun to get to know you guys. So I appreciate this. I'm gonna hit the stop button, but you might wait around just for a moment or two.